Hi everyone, Annika Digital here. Welcome to our webinar on crypto and blockchain. Darren does this as pretty much a hobby, absolutely knows so much about it, something that I don't really know a lot about, so I'm really looking forward to this session. And just to kind of scope the audience, we just want to do a quick poll actually. So we'll go ahead with that quickly. So what is your current level of knowledge of blockchain and cryptocurrency? A, nothing, entry level. B, just what I hear in the news. C, I've researched it a little bit. D, I know a lot. E, I'm a crypto expert. So far it's 100% on nothing at the moment. So
Excellent.
Just waiting for a few more people to reply.
That helps. I was worried there would be a room full of crypto experts here.
Well, someone's researched a little bit, Darren. So 88% nothing, 12% I've researched a little bit. Mainly it's a new crowd though. So yeah, it's new to me. And it's kind of something I just pick up on in the media and kind of, I don't know, it's a bit like background noise, but something I really would like to know more about.
Yeah, so there's a lot in the media about it. Hopefully today dispels a few myths maybe, and we'll just sort of clarify a couple of things a bit better.
Yeah, there's a bit of it. So basically now it's 77% don't know anything, 8% just what I've heard in the news, and then 15% is just moving around a bit, says I've researched a little bit. So at least we know what the audience is like today. I'm going to be supporting chat. Anne's probably in the background somewhere as well. We've got handouts available, which I can share now. So yeah, looking forward to it. What else to say really? Well, the webinar will be available on Catch Up. That will be emailed to you once it gets published via the Big Marker website. And, just feel free to message me. So over to you then, Darren, really.
Thanks, Katie. Morning, everyone. My name's Darren Wynn. I'm going to be going through cryptocurrency today and a little bit about blockchain. I'm just getting a coffee delivered to me. Thank you. Perfect. So a bit of background on who I am. So I started my career in paid media, doing PPC management, Annika Digital, and then moved across to operations. And today I'm managing director of Annika Digital. In terms of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I've been in and around crypto for a while now. So 2014 was the first time I ever heard about Bitcoin. So I remember it quite vividly. I was on a stag do in London, and someone mentioned it to me, and we started talking about it. And I did a bit of research on it. Subsequently, forgot all about it. Wish I hadn't. But it was this interesting kind of new technology at the time, and it was sort of a bit different from everything we knew about. 2017 was where I first bought my first cryptocurrency, and I bought it just in time. I was quite lucky at that point. It had a bit of a crash just before that, and I bought this piece of cryptocurrency, knew nothing about it, but started to engage with what it is and the technology behind it. And then watched just as price exploded. If anyone knew back then, 2017 was when we saw that massive initial rise in Bitcoin price, all the way up to, I think it was $20,000. And then subsequently fell back by more or less the same amount. I just kind of stood there in awe as this asset just blew up in value and then decreased by the same amount. And it was just like, wow, what is this? So from that point onwards, really, and to today, I've just basically been buying bits of cryptocurrency here and there. I've started to get more involved with the industry now. I talked to a couple of people that work in the industry, and a lot of people that buy cryptocurrencies and are involved in that space. And just been learning more about the technology in quite a patchy way, as you do when you start to get into it in this type of way. I'm not in the industry, working in the industry, so it's kind of picking up knowledge here and there. But I've grown to really sort of enjoy using the technology. As far as today's concerned, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not as technical as I would like to be on the subject. It's going to be a skim over it. I said to Katie earlier, if this is of interest to anyone, maybe it is that we do a kind of series of these things and we get a bit more into how blockchain and cryptocurrency can be useful for SMEs and business on a daily basis. But today's just going to be a skim over the surface of it. Through my journey of cryptocurrency, I've been involved with massive amounts of innovation and seeing the industry grow. I've been involved with seed investment and even been a part of it. I've been a victim of things like frauds and scams and deceptions and all of the stuff that you hear about that's involved with cryptocurrency. I've kind of been a part of all of it. So I've learned my lessons, and hopefully I can impart some of that wisdom today. Here's a rough agenda of the stuff we're going to go through. I'm going to spend most of the time talking about blockchain, talking about cryptocurrency and the background of that, and just a really brief example of what it is and how it works. That's going to take probably about half an hour. I'm then going to move on to NFTs. I thought NFTs was an interesting subject because it gets a lot of hate, and in part rightly so. But there's some really interesting parts of NFT which I wanted to bring out today and just talk about, because I think it's an interesting subject. Now that the hype's died down and we can look at the technology for what it is, I think it's quite interesting to just talk a bit about that. I'm going to go through investment really quickly if we've got time. Investment is one of those things. I'm not a financial advisor. I would never tell anyone to invest in cryptocurrency. But when people think of cryptocurrency, investment is one of those first things that they think of. You know, should I be putting my money into it? So I thought it was worth touching on that. And then right at the end, I'll talk a bit about future and one of the concerns that I have over cryptocurrency and where this industry is headed, and give my thoughts on that as well. There's a fair amount of assumption today, and there's quite as a dash of optimism in there as well. If you've seen the news recently and the price of these types of cryptocurrencies, they have fallen in value by a fair amount. So as with any new technology and new thing, if I knew where the industry was going in the future, I'd be a rich man. I think that there's a lot that we still don't know about what the value is and what it holds for us in the future. So there's some assumptions in here and some guesswork as to where the industry is headed. So let's talk about first what blockchain is. Blockchain is the technology. So when we talk about blockchain and when we talk about cryptocurrencies today, blockchain is the underpinning technology on which everything else is built. Think about how the internet works. The internet is very similar in style to how the blockchain is. And then when you've got something like an email client that sits on top of the internet and uses the internet, is powered by the internet. When we talk about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, and then when we talk about the blockchain, things like Bitcoin are powered by the blockchain, so it sits on top of that technical layer, and then stuff is built on top of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. As I'm going through today, I'm going to use the term Web3 quite a lot. Web3 is just our general term for anything to do with cryptocurrency, anything to do with blockchain. It's all kind of encompassed in that term of Web3. So if you hear me say Web3, I'm just talking about blockchain, cryptocurrency, and everything that's built on top of it. So when I was thinking about how best to describe what a blockchain is, it's obviously a huge area, and I tried to simplify it as much as possible and how to communicate that to people. And I thought, let's break it down into as few core components of what it is as possible. And I came up with these three core components. First one of which is that blockchain at its core, its basics, is basically just a database. And in terms of databases, it's not even a particularly sophisticated one, and it doesn't particularly innovate in any particular area. It's just a database as we know and use today. So where you might have a spreadsheet or a database where you input data and then call data back, blockchain's very similar in how that actually operates. It's just a repository of data. Where blockchain starts to differ from an ordinary database is that blockchains in most cases are append only, by which I mean once you put data into that and you bake that data into the database, you can't change it. It's uneditable at that point. And probably most significant around blockchain is the fact that it's decentralized. So rather than with an ordinary database that someone might have on a computer or a centralized location where that database is stored, with blockchain, the database doesn't live in any one place. It's spread all across the world, across multiple computers, we call them nodes, and lives in lots of different places all at once. So it's obvious from this that the innovation here with blockchain and cryptocurrencies isn't necessarily in the database aspect of it. We've had databases for years and we know how those operate. The difference here is that it's a decentralized database and it can't be changed, it can't be forged, it's uneditable. So in that sense, rather than having a third party or one entity that looks after the data, we have to rely on that third party to make sure that the data is always correct. Instead of that, the information fidelity and the security of that network is guaranteed through this hive mind, decentralized network effect of making sure and doing checks and balances to make sure that database is always the same. And if there's anything that stands out, the network rejects it because it's not what everyone else sees. And like I said, blockchain is the underpinning technology. So it's the underlying technology on which all of this Web3, all of this cryptocurrency is built on top of. So it's important to know because with these type of innovations, we can have a blockchain without necessarily having a need for a cryptocurrency. We can just have a blockchain that operates on its own and get all the value out of a blockchain that it brings. But we can't have a cryptocurrency without having a blockchain. So the cryptocurrency sits on top of that and utilizes that technology in order to operate. And that's really important when we start to talk about things like value, because when we talk about value of cryptocurrency, the real value and innovation here in part comes from blockchain and not necessarily from cryptocurrency, although it's all debated. So Bitcoin is one of the most well-known cryptocurrencies that are in existence. This is a rough guide to how Bitcoin operates. So we have when someone transacts with Bitcoin, a new transaction is entered into the system, and then it's submitted to this network, this decentralized network of peer-to-peer computers scattered all over the world. They all check and do their maths. They solve equations to basically confirm the validity of a single transaction. And then once that transaction is confirmed, it's then clustered together in blocks, and then those blocks are chained together, and that's where we get the name blockchain from. And it's stored on that blockchain. There's a long history of all the transactions, and then once it's confirmed and on the blockchain, we get a message to say that transaction was completed. Blocks are filled up one by one with data and then passed and then added to that chain. So that chain is uneditable. It's verifiable at any time. If you wanted to, if you really wanted to, you could download the entire Bitcoin blockchain. It's about, current speaking, I think it was about 400 gigs in size, this blockchain. And with all the data that's being added to it, it increases at a rate of about 5 gigabytes per month. There's a misconception that cryptocurrencies are anonymous, and that ties into the fact that people often think that only criminals use Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, and that anonymity has started to decline. Bitcoin in itself is anonymous. You can sign up to a wallet, cryptocurrency wallet, accept cryptocurrencies, and all of that side of things is anonymous. But where it's not anonymous now is in the on-ramps and off-ramps to this cryptocurrency industry. So if you wanted to buy cryptocurrency, you would have to go onto an exchange, and those exchanges are now regulated quite heavily. Some exchanges are through things like KYC laws. So KYC is know your customer, so you have to add a lot of details to these systems. So although cryptocurrency is still quite anonymous, the on-ramps and off-ramps to the cryptocurrency is now less so. And that brings down things like criminal behavior and criminals using this type of network. Really brief background about what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin was created by an anonymous individual. He used the alias Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who this person is. He first talked about Bitcoin in a cryptography mailing list in 2008. There's lots of talk about who they were. It could have been a group of people. It could have been one individual. There's loads of people today that claim to be him or know who they are, but no one can ever prove it verifiably. And then Satoshi's never really been found. So most people think that he's either dead or he's just not wanting to be the figurehead for what he's created. So 2008 was the first time that Satoshi ever spoke about Bitcoin, and then by 2010 he disappeared entirely. His last post was to a Bitcoin developer, and there's a phrase, there's a quote there on what he said to that developer about him not wanting to be the one that's talked about when they talk about Bitcoin, but talk about Bitcoin itself and the value that it brings. And ever since then, Bitcoin's been developed by a group of developers. Bitcoin's open source, which means anyone can contribute to the development of the network. It doesn't need any one single figurehead. It can be developed by lots of people. So the question becomes, why Bitcoin? Why create this digital currency in the first place, and what problems does it solve? So like I said, Bitcoin was created in 2009, and that was in the wake of the 2008 financial crash, which spurred Satoshi, whoever they were, to create this thing. And they created it to give financial control back to ordinary people and try and give them a chance to take ownership of the assets, of their assets themselves in a really decentralized manner, rather than trust a bank or trust an individual to look after that information for them. I'll read this out quickly. This is a quote from Satoshi. He said, "The root problem with conventional currency is that all the trust that's required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency. The history is full of fiat currencies, full of breaches of that trust. Banks must be trusted not to hold our money and transfer it electronically, but they lend it out in waves of credit bubbles with barely a fraction in reserve. We have to trust them with our privacy, trust them not to let identity thieves drain our accounts, and the massive overhead costs make microtransactions, micropayments impossible." So you can see the kind of individual that Satoshi was. He lived through that 2008 crash, and he wanted to create something better as a result, something that put the power back in people's hands, rather than have to trust these banks and central figures. So then the question becomes, well, why do we have banks in the first place? Why do we have these central systems? So we have centralized systems and trusted third parties like banks in order to ensure security, legitimacy of the banking network and financial systems, avoid things like forgeries, avoid concepts like double spending. So double spending is an issue that occurs especially in computerized financial systems, where basically we don't want anyone spending some money somewhere and then being able to spend that same money somewhere else, essentially being able to print their own money. Now that would obviously be very bad for the financial integrity of the system if we could spend money twice. So historically, we've needed a central figure or central authority like a bank in order to do these checks and make sure that money is moving around our system safely. And Bitcoin's become one of the first. It wasn't the first, I don't think, but it was one of the first and most successful ways of solving this issue of double spending without needing this central figure in place to confirm and make sure we do all those checks. So rather than have a third party checking and keeping a record of these things, we've got nodes and validators in a network that is all over in a decentralized way that that does these checks for us. I'm going to play a video now. It's only 2 minutes long, and I'm gonna cough while this plays. Hopefully it works.
I can't hear anything, Darren. It is playing though.
Okay, let me try one other way.
I don't know. It might be me. If anyone else wants to add to the chat.
I can't hear it either. You might be better off sharing your screen rather than.
I am sharing my screen. It
Oh,
works
okay.
earlier. Let me try one quick way, and if not, we'll just move on. It's typical, isn't it? Can you see this?
Click audio.
When you want to buy something normally, using your normal bank card, this is what happens. I give my card details to the shop. The shop asks the bank if I'm good for the money. The bank checks its records to see if I've got enough in my account. If I do, it lets the shop know. It updates its records.
I have no idea what you heard or what you saw. Technology. We'll continue. I've sent the video, so that's in the chat. You can have a look at it afterwards. It's a 2-minute video from the BBC. It was from four years ago, but still interesting to this day just to see and give another perspective on how this network validates transactions in a decentralized way to make sure there's no forgeries, and works in the same way that a central bank would operate to make sure that the data is all valid. So a quick history rundown of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and where we've come from in the past. I just want to make sure you can hear me now. Yeah. So 2009 was the Genesis block. We call it the Genesis block. So this was the first block that of Bitcoin that ever existed. It was mined by Satoshi himself. And that first initial block contained a little bit of information, a message hidden inside it. And the message was from a headline from the Times newspaper that simply said, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. So it goes in line with what we know and about Satoshi and why he created this in the first place. So that was baked into the first ever message that was put on the Bitcoin blockchain. 2010, May 22nd was Bitcoin Pizza Day, which is a day in Bitcoin's history. It's now infamous. It was one of the first times that Bitcoin was ever used in a transactional way to pay for something. It was used to pay for a pizza. The price of that pizza was 10,000 Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin today is something like $12,000, and at its height it was something like $68,000. So you do 68,000 times 10,000 Bitcoin, you can see How much that is in today's money, at the time it was probably a good deal for a pizza. Not today, but the first time that Bitcoin was, or one of the first times that Bitcoin was ever used in a transaction. 2011 February, Silk Road opened. Silk Road was a site, a black market site that was used for lots of illegal behaviors, buying drugs and other things even worse than that. It was Bitcoin was used at that time to transact on that site in an anonymous way, and Bitcoin, that negative image around Bitcoin still sticks with Bitcoin to this day, when it was used in its early days in Silk Road. 2013, the US authorities eventually shut down Silk Road, and a man called Ross Ulbricht was arrested. Ross Ulbricht, if you have the time, there's really good documentaries on YouTube about Silk Road and about Ross Ulbricht, and it's a really interesting story about how that was created and what happened leading up to his arrest. 2014 saw a major hack of a cryptocurrency exchange called Mt. Gox, and that caused the first ever Bitcoin price crash. Hackers gained access to the Mt. Gox exchange and started skimming funds from their reserves, and eventually Mt. Gox went insolvent, and a lot of people lost money in it, and like I say, it led to a huge crash. 2015 saw the introduction of another cryptocurrency called Ethereum. I'll talk a bit about that in a bit. 2016 saw the introduction of the ICO phase. So ICO stands for initial coin offering. If you've ever heard of the phrase IPO, so initial public offering, that's a legitimate way that companies can raise early seed money for their businesses by selling parts of their business, their shares, to raise that capital to actually fund and run their business when they don't have enough cash. And what you can do with cryptocurrency, you can very easily create these coins, these tokens that exist on top of a blockchain, and it doesn't even have to be a blockchain that you create. It can be another blockchain, for example, Ethereum's blockchain. And people realize that really quickly and really cheaply you can create these coins and then create a business and then sell these coins to individuals, to retail, raise lots of funds, and then you can use that to seed fund your business. And that obviously opens up the door to lots of nefarious characters who just wanted to create a fake business, sell these coins, and then walk away with the funds. And that happened a lot. A lot of people lost money, more bad press for blockchain and Bitcoin, and eventually regulators stepped in and started to regulate that market. And today we don't really use the term ICO much. It was kind of a phrase we used to use in the past, although that still exists, just under different names now. 2018 saw the interest in Bitcoin come from institutional investors, so vehicles, regulated investment vehicles were created so that these large organizations, these large hedge funds, etc., could gain exposure to Bitcoin without necessarily always having to buy Bitcoin itself. There was investment vehicles where you gain exposure to the volatility that exists in the markets. And it added a huge amount of legitimacy to cryptocurrencies at that point, and then a lot of fresh money started to come into the system then. 2020, PayPal entered cryptocurrency and is still there today. So they were just basically another crypto exchange where retail could just go onto PayPal, and you can do that now and buy and sell your cryptocurrency through them. So nice to start to see these big names entering the space. And then 2021, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. The president there, Nayib Bukele, he's a divisive character in his own right. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. I don't understand it well enough to talk about it. But he introduced Bitcoin as legal tender. And it's safe to say people in that country, some people love it, other people hate it. Obviously, if you're legally required to accept Bitcoin as payment with the volatility that exists with Bitcoin, it's quite a scary thing to think of. Some other facts about Bitcoin. There's only ever going to be 21 million of them created. That's built into its design, coded into it. So there's no way that can ever increase. There's currently around 19 million Bitcoin in circulation today, and every 4 years the difficulty it takes to create a new Bitcoin becomes infinitely harder. It doubles in difficulty, and that makes Bitcoin quite deflationary by design, almost to its fault. And we'll talk a bit about deflation and inflation later. Bitcoin's open source, like I said, so anyone can work on it. If you're a developer, you can work on Bitcoin. And like I said, Bitcoin is not the blockchain. Bitcoin is an application that sits on top of that technology layer that we talk about when we talk about blockchain. Somewhere in that history, the success of Bitcoin started to not go unnoticed, and other cryptocurrencies started to come about, and there was this sudden boom in cryptocurrency tokens and new blockchains being developed. We call those altcoins. So if you've got Bitcoin and then everything else is an altcoin, alternative coin. And there's now an estimated 10,000 to 20,000 of these cryptocurrencies or tokens that exist out there. I would say probably around 97 to 99% of them are complete cons or scams, not worth your time. There's so many of them exist. The problem with crypto markets are the industry has this habit of creating a problem within this economy that then is solved by more cryptocurrency and more blockchain, and it's this inward looking thing that keeps building and building. And what I tell people to do from time to time, especially when you're thinking about investing in these things, is just take a step back and look at that and wonder whether it's actually adding anything to our lives, because blockchain and cryptocurrency, ultimately they're here to solve problems and add value to the lives in which that we lead, and a lot of these don't. So yeah, it's a bit of a wild west. When we talk about blockchains, there's a couple of different versions. This graph's probably about 6 years old now. We can see there's different bubbles. So we've got the money bubble in which Bitcoin lives, so transactions and transferring liquidity from one person to another person. We've got these platforms, which I'm going to talk about now, and we've got other things, technical things like bridges and layers, and there's probably about 8 or 9 of these bubbles now in terms of the classification of different blockchains and what they do and what problems they solve. If I had more time, I'd go into each of them and tell you about them, but we just don't today. One that I am going to talk about is this platform layer. And this black diamond here is Ethereum. So Ethereum was launched in 2015. It's one of the largest, if not the most, the biggest and well-established decentralized software platform that exists today. It's got a market cap of 139 billion. And this man here, Vitalik Buterin, he's the founder of Ethereum, and that's him on stage this year talking in a very nice pair of pajamas, which I just thought was funny. This guy's responsible for $139 billion industry, and he comes on stage wearing orange pajamas, so you've got to love it. Similar to Bitcoin, Ethereum uses blockchain technology, and it uses transactions, but the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is that within those transactions, within that blockchain, we can actually include things like executable code. So Ethereum can then power things like decentralized applications, smart contracts, and we can think of these things as like a tiny computer that lives on the blockchain and executes things to make other things happen. And that's why we call Ethereum a technology platform, a decentralized software platform, rather than Bitcoin, which is just for the transfer of money to and from people. When we talk about applications in a decentralized manner, we say the word dApps. So if you hear the word dApps, that's a decentralized application. There's loads of these platforms now that exist. Ethereum's not the only one that does this. There's lots of different blockchains, but Ethereum's debatably the largest. So 2 use cases of Ethereum and this decentralized software platform. The first one is DeFi, or decentralized finance. So I've given an example here with Bitcoin. You've got an option really when with Alice and Bob, if you want to send one Bitcoin with Bitcoin, you just send one Bitcoin from Alice to Bob. With Ethereum, you can send one Ethereum from Alice to Bob, but you can set these rules and these parameters around it. And there's this really simplified example I've given. You can set the date. I want to send it on the 25th of November, and I want to send it if Bob's balance drops below 5 Ethereum. And what that's created, if you can imagine that really simple example, but then just expand it to all the complications that might exist once developers get hold of it, and once the industry starts to gain pace. This decentralized finance thing is now massive, and you can build decentralized finance apps on top of it. Like, for example, if you wanted to do peer-to-peer lending or borrowing in a way that's decentralized without the need for trust, because it's built into the code, and then without the need for these central banks, then I can lend Bob 5 Ethereum today through a DeFi platform, knowing that I'm going to get maybe some interest back from that, and eventually I'll get my money back as well. And that's all hard coded into what Ethereum can do. The other thing that Ethereum can do is have NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, built on top of it. I'm hoping we're going to have enough time. We'll talk a bit about NFTs and the value that they can bring, and some of the elements in which there may be a little bit of less value as well. I hope I've not lost anyone. This is a highly complex area, and these are very early principles, and you could go into a lot of information about each of these things, and that's why I'm saying maybe in future episodes we go through this in a bit more detail. One of the interesting things we talk about when we talk about cryptocurrency is how quickly it's getting adopted, and we use adoption in a couple of different classifications. I've got a graph here that shows the adoption of blockchain in terms of the number of wallets that have been created, and you can see, and there's another graph I've got here on the adoption of cryptocurrency based on the engagement rates of the network itself. Whichever metric we use, we usually benchmark adoption rates against something like the internet, which is just the closest approximation that we've got to how quickly a new technology can get adopted and used by everyone in the world. So the internet is the white line here, and you can see the orange line with cryptocurrency adoption rates. We're actually exceeding that at the moment, and who knows where it will go in the future. We may end up tailing off or just going down entirely, but most people have theorized that we're going to continue along that adoption rate, similar to how the internet was adopted. So we'll keep an eye on that. We just want to make sure that adoption of cryptocurrency continues as more value comes out around what cryptocurrency is and what blockchain is. I wanted to try and today give some example of how blockchain could be used today in the world we live in. So I did some research, and I typed in blockchain and uses today, and I came up with this example that exists right now, and it's being implemented as we speak in supply chains. So currently what we've got with supply chains is we're moving towards a world where greater transparency is needed from the products that we buy. And so it's increasingly important that these supply chains and these retailers prove and have efficiency and transparency in the supply chain that they're building. It's especially true in things like fashion, tech industry. We want to know where our mobile phones come from and make sure that all those companies are living up to CSR promises. Things like the coffee industry. So traditionally what these companies would do is use digital databases that are stored in one place, maybe in part, and then in another place, another part. And they record that information on their supply chain, and it's usually not very transparent. It's highly exposed to things like tampering or invoice forgeries. There's a lot of data loss in these types of systems, and generally speaking, these supply chains are not very reliable. So blockchain is able to step in and solve some of these problems. So imagine a situation where, rather than logging the supply chain in a traditional sense, we can use a blockchain where for every stage of this supply chain, a new input is given into the blockchain. So a new block is created, and we're recording things on the blockchain, such as things like where's the goods come from, what's their weight, quantity, quality, the location, the time, the individual that added to that supply chain, all the way through from, for example, in a coffee example, the grower of the coffee beans, all the way through to the end retailer and end user of that good. So where, for example, a coffee farmer in Brazil or wherever might at the moment sign a piece of paper that eventually gets lost or whatever, to sort of confirm the sale or transaction or the shipment of what he's produced, they can now record that process on the blockchain, and that blockchain transaction is then secure, it's uneditable, unchangeable, and it's provable through this decentralized effect. So by using blockchain, data loss is eradicated because it's all stored there on a blockchain. It's all transparent. It's trust lists, so everyone can see the same piece of information, and that makes data processing a lot faster as well because it's all in one place. That type of situation doesn't eradicate the need for things like middlemen to input data. It's the old saying, garbage in, garbage out, and that's the same. The blockchain's not going to eradicate that. We still need to make sure that the data that goes into the blockchain is correct and clean. And then I thought about how we could take that one step further. So now everything's on the blockchain, and that entire cycle is transparent and clear, and everyone agrees that it's correct. You can imagine a world where an end user or maybe a coffee drinker could then see that supply chain and see every part of it, and then see who actually grew those coffee beans in the very first instance. And then if you add a cryptocurrency layer on top of that again, you could even imagine a world where the consumer of the product is very close to the initial supplier of the product, the coffee grower, and could even tip that coffee grower through cryptocurrency, knowing that the person they're tipping is the right person, and verifiably so. So it's an interesting application of blockchain. Like I say, the technology exists today. It can utilize existing technology on things like, so supply chains use things like QR codes to scan, RFID tags, 5G. You don't necessarily need internet connection to add information to a blockchain. I've read that you can use SIM cards and basic telephone technology to actually add that information just through text. So it's very simple to implement this type of system. I was going to talk a bit about wallets. So we use wallets when we navigate Web3, and wallets are basically our doorway and our access to our crypto funds. But wallets have started to become more complex and more integrated into what we do as we start to adopt cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency wallets are your ability to be able to access your funds. They're permissionless, they're anonymous, so you can go around the web with an anonymous identity tied to your crypto wallet. You can access these Web3 sites anonymously and only give away the information that you want to give away. And you can buy something through these websites as well anonymously without needing to contact a bank or get them involved. And I use wallets a lot now. When I'm surfing the web, I'm actually starting to look for these wallet sign-in. You know, where's the wallet access button, so that I can actually connect my wallet and transact in the way that I would with most Web3 dApps and websites. And when you go on websites at the moment and you see, you know, connect via Facebook, connect via Google, these companies make a huge amount of money from our data and the network effect that's granted to them through providing this type of access and using our data to give the right kind of access to websites. And crypto wallets is a way of doing that, but keeping the data secure, but still verified through this network, this decentralized network, and still being able to gain access to these things and gain access to gated content, etc. These cryptocurrency wallets are free to set up. They basically act as a bank account for the assets you hold. They're unique to you, and you are ultimately responsible for your security. With the way that regulation works and the way that cryptocurrency works, if you ever get hacked or you're the victim of social engineering scams, no one's going to come and reimburse you if you lose your funds. Those funds are gone forever. If I had more time, I'd go through what a wallet is. A wallet comes with a lot of different things. So it comes with a public key, a private key. The public key, this long string that I've got here, is your address. So if someone wanted to send you cryptocurrency, there's easier ways of doing this now. You can just type in my name, for example. But most of the time, you type in this address, or you copy paste this address to be able to send money or send other things to me. Every wallet has a seed phrase. If you go and you create a wallet, it'll ask you to log down your seed phrase. That seed phrase is your backup to your crypto funds. So you need to make sure that you secure that in an offline location. Don't take a picture of it on your phone or type it into a notepad document in your computer. Keep it offline and keep it secure. If you lose your computer or you lose access to your wallet, you can always get it back with that seed phrase. If you get the slides, come back and have a look at this. There's lots of different wallets that exist. The most important one is the hardware wallet. So I've got a few of these, and they just add an extra level of security. So they look like this, just like a key, like a USB stick. And it just means that when you're transacting in Web3 and you're paying for things, you need to have a physical device on you. And it just means that if a scammer on the other side of the world wanted to gain access to your funds, they would need to gain access to this key as well, and it just adds that layer of security. Custody of cryptocurrency. So when we talk about wallets, when you go on an exchange and you buy cryptocurrencies, the tendency is for people to want to just leave those funds on an exchange, and the crypto exchange will probably tell you that your funds are secure. History of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency would tell you that that is not true, and what you need to do is take that cryptocurrency off exchange. There's been a recent example of that, a fraud that existed within an exchange called FTX. This literally happened this week, and this man here who founded FTX, second largest cryptocurrency exchange that's now insolvent, has left a $10 billion hole behind, and he's now on the run somewhere. And their terms and conditions said, oh, it's your cryptocurrency, we just look after it for you, but it turned out not to be true. So as long as you take control of your cryptocurrency, then no one can take that from you. I took this from Instagram. This is Drake's hardware wallet for his cryptocurrency, and he's got it all with diamonds in it, so I thought that was quite funny. I'll put that. I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to skip to NFTs quickly to see if I can get to NFTs. The whole subject of NFTs done in 10 minutes. So I need to talk about some of the downsides of cryptocurrency, and there's a few of those. So the first one is scalability. So when we talk about scaling cryptocurrency, we talk about something called transactions per second. That's how quickly can this network process transactions every second. And as an example, Visa can process transactions at about 24,000 transactions per second. In comparison, Bitcoin historically can transact at a rate of about 7 transactions per second. And that's not 700 or 7,000, 7. So you think of Visa doing 24,000 transactions per second and then Bitcoin doing 7. There's obviously issues that exist there with scalability. And as more people use the Bitcoin network, it becomes cluttered, slower, more expensive to operate. We're starting to get around those scalability issues now. With Ethereum, will soon be able to do 100,000 transactions per second. So the actual future-proofing of cryptocurrency and blockchain far exceeds what we can do today with things like Visa. But it has been a slow time coming. It's just with new technology, it takes time to build on this network and make it faster. Cybersecurity. So with any new technology, there comes bad actors and people that are going to try and hack us or scam us. And that's very true with cryptocurrency at the moment. There's loads of risks that exist, from social engineering scams, where people will try and take your private keys or your seed phrase, and then steal that, and then steal your funds, all the way through to hackers that really know what they're doing, either by hacking exchanges or by using Ethereum, for example, with smart contracts. Like I said, it's like a computer that can execute code. So there's ways that they could send you, for example, NFTs, that then if you interact with, it executes a piece of code that then can be used to drain your wallet or steal your funds. So there's a lot of cybersecurity issues that exist if you're not careful. The actual Bitcoin and blockchain in itself is highly secure. Volatility is a big one. So it's not unusual for Bitcoin to drop in price 20% in a single day. And this massive amount of volatility that exists puts a lot of people off from investing in it. And as we go through, that volatility will reduce somewhat, and it will become less volatile. But for the time being, we've just got to ride those things out. So it's good to have a long vision when you're looking to invest in Bitcoin, and then you can ride out these peaks and troughs in price. I think in the last 10 years of Bitcoin, we've had 8 years where if you invested at the start of the year, you'd be up in value in fiat terms by the end of the year, and we've had 2 of those years where you would have lost money. So if you consider that over a 5-year span, you would have made a huge amount if you'd have just invested at any stage in the last 5 years ago. And then we've got regulation. Regulation is coming in, but it's being rejected by the crypto community quite heavily for obvious reasons. They like it decentralized. They like it without regulation. The problem without regulation is that no one's going to come to your rescue. No one's going to look out on your behalf for bad actors or people that may be looking to take your money. And it's also a barrier to entry for things like business. Because if you're a business and you're not necessarily looking to break new grounds or invest in things like Bitcoin or asset classes that don't have this regulation, you'd probably just steer clear of it and stick to more regulated asset classes to invest your time in and money in. So lack of regulation is a downside of cryptocurrency as much as it is an upside. Katie, I've got 5 minutes left. I'm not going to get through NFTs today. I don't know if we want to do a separate session on that. And I'll just finish off talking about this side of things today.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good plan, to be honest. We can ask the audience, though, what they prefer. There's a bit of conversation going on in terms of, just kind of how people are interpreting what you're saying. So some people are saying, oh, it sounds like a bit of a bubble that might go pop. And then blockchain reduces corruption, correct? And then some people are saying, it sounds quite corrupt and complicated. And then some people are saying, oh, what are the benefits of doing it, really? So it's quite interesting. It's quite, a lot of people, as we know from the poll, are from a kind of, beginner, background, aren't they? It's not something I know enough about either, so it's quite interesting listening to something where there's obviously things that and there's a lot of new words and jargon, isn't there, around everything? So it's quite a lot to take in. So I do think that's a good call, actually. Everyone else is saying, separate session would be good.
Let's tap into this then in another session and go a bit deeper into some of these concepts. The problem with blockchain is that it is very new. So I'm talking about it today and making some assumptions about what it could be used for in the future. But we still don't know where that value is going to be. I think that when we talk about bubbles, we're trying to tie that bubble in terms of value and investment back to Bitcoin. And ultimately, like I said, we've got the technical layer, which is blockchain. That's the thing that underpins. And that's where I think a lot of value in cryptocurrency in this Web3 world will come from. because blockchain is highly it's highly technical, but it has a lot of use cases in the real world. But those use cases are still being established by people that are willing to take that risk and try and implement Web3 and blockchain into what they do. And I gave an example of supply chain, and there's a couple of other examples that exist out there and how we can utilize blockchain. And then we talk about the bubble that is cryptocurrency, and we talk about the investment side of things. And I think that there is a case to say that we are in a bit of a bubble, and that bubble could pop at any time. We don't know what the value of Bitcoin is. We don't know what the value of these cryptocurrencies are. And I would urge, I was going to go through the investment of cryptocurrency, but what I would say is to urge caution with any kind of investment in cryptocurrency. If you don't understand it enough, and you're just trying to invest in it because you think it's going to 10x your money, or you're going to make more out of it, then you got to question the concept of what is the true value of what you're investing in from a cryptocurrency perspective. And yes, there is always a case that with cryptocurrency, that bubble could pop at any time and money could be lost. And that's especially true. Not so much true of Bitcoin. I think when you talk about value, it's quite an interesting subject. I love to have these conversations with people about what value actually is, because value with things like gold, the value of gold is only what the value that people place on it. The value with our cash system and fiat currencies is only the value that we place on it. The gold standard was dropped a long time ago, and it's a similar case with cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrency value is only the value that anyone is willing to pay for it, and the value that we all collectively as society agree that Bitcoin is worth. And if everyone decides it's worthless tomorrow, then that bubble's going to pop and Bitcoin will be worthless. I think Bitcoin has reached a certain stage in its life cycle where people realize value in it. And I don't think that bubble may pop and Bitcoin may lose 80% of its value again, but its underlying blockchain technology and Bitcoin itself won't cease to exist. It will carry on regardless of the value that people place in it. And when we look at the fiat currencies and the massive amount of money printing that goes on in things like the dollar at the moment, that value is just being printed and printed and printed. And like I said, Bitcoin, there's only ever going to be 21 million of them. That's a hard cap on all that will ever exist. So value is a really interesting conversation. I think that ties into the whole is it a bubble or is it not thing. I could spend an hour just talking about that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Thanks, Darren. I'm just gonna. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. Hang on. I just want to ask if people here today, if you've got time, if you can leave Darren a review. I've got to be honest. I think for me, I might have to rewatch it a bit, and that's and I'm quite a techie person, but it's a bit like a new world. So, Darren, I hope you don't mind me saying that.
No, not at all.
I do want to learn about. I just can't quite fully get my head around it yet. So, and there's quite a lot of commentary from different people. So someone's saying, it reminds stocks and shares. It's a bit of a gambling act, and people talking about gold. Anne's saying I'm logged in as her. So sorry about that, Anne. It's because I was fiddling around because of that situation with Darren early in the video. So sorry, Anne. Yes, but my picture does come up as me. So.
Well, I was going to get onto something even more debatable subject of NFTs, because I think that's a whole other thing that is built on top of cryptocurrency and blockchain today. And there's a lot of question marks over its value, but I think there's a lot of value in NFT as well. And it's a shame we don't have time to go into that, but maybe I'll split this up into various different sections and we can have a whole hour just on NFTs and we can have a whole hour just on blockchain. And maybe we can start a little web series that goes into these concepts, trying to talk about a whole new industry in the space of an hour and try and convey its value, I guess is quite a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, so I think there doesn't seem to be any questions. Anne's saying I'm logged in as her, obviously. Anna Lomax seems to know a lot about this, saying, it's still difficult. It's a work in progress. Accountants don't always understand it. And it's quite interesting. Thanks, Gordon. Thanks for the feedback. So yeah, really enjoyed today. Obviously this session will get published, and you'll receive this on probably in the next couple of hours, actually. Yeah, it's new to me, Carol, as well. So yeah, well, thanks, Darren. So we'll book in another date to do this again, and Anna's giving some of her feedback on different things. I didn't know Anna knew so much about this, so that's interesting as well. Okay, all right then. Well, we'll see you next week. The session next week is around business development and sales. So keep a lookout for that one. It's something a bit different. And I've also put in the chat our link to the main webinar section on our website, and mainly because we've done some really good sessions, introductory kind of digital marketing sessions around for Leicester Business Festival. So I didn't want anyone to miss those. All right then. Okay. Have a great Friday and weekend. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.